Imagine the scene. 180,000 men, a human tide stretching across the European plain. They march not in the crisp lines of ceremonial parades, but as a staggering, exhausted, yet utterly formidable force. At their head rides the man whose ambition reshaped a continent, Napoleon Bonaparte. But we're not here to talk about emperors and generals. We're here to talk about the men who made the empire run. The ordinary souls caught in the most relentless military machine the world had ever seen. The air is thick with anticipation and terror. You are a conscript. Perhaps just weeks ago you were turning soil in a small French village or hammering steel in a German forge. Now you stand in a column of thousands, your worn musket heavy in your hands, your heart hammering against the itchy wool of your uniform. The sound you hear is not thunder. It is the Grande Armée moving to war. The story of the Napoleonic soldier begins long before the flash of the cannon. It begins with the call to arms, often a brutal, non-negotiable decree. For hundreds of thousands of young men across France and her satellite states, the conscription lottery was not a game of chance, but a sudden, violent severance from civilian life. You were not joining an army. You were being absorbed by a revolution. Once drafted, the transformation was swift and brutal. Training was designed not merely to teach you how to fire a musket, but to break you down and rebuild you as a cog in Napoleon's grand machine. Discipline was absolute. Drills were relentless, designed to instill the terrifying, almost mechanical precision required for line-of-battle combat. Woe betide the man whose uniform was soiled, whose musket misfired, or whose step faltered in the rank. A single moment of hesitation could invite the lash, or worse. But the most immediate hardship was one that historians often overlook, yet one that defined every hour of a soldier's life: the march. The Grande Armée was famous for its speed, what the French called manœuvre sous le derrière, outflanking and surprising the enemy. This required covering vast distances at a punishing pace, often 25 to 30 miles a day, carrying a pack that weighed up to 60 pounds or 27 kilograms. Think about that weight. It contained everything that stood between you and a freezing death: extra uniform parts, a canteen, a knapsack full of meager rations, usually hard biscuits and salted meat, and those heavy, ill-fitting leather shoes. Napoleon famously remarked that an army marches on its stomach, but his soldiers knew the terrifying truth: an army marches on its feet. What happened when those thin soles wore through on the stone roads of Spain or the frozen earth of Russia? You kept marching. You wrapped your feet in rags. You bled into your boots. Because to fall out of the line was not a rest. It was a sentence of isolation, possible capture, or even death by a severe provost marshal. How much pain does a man have to endure before the glory of the emperor fades into a desperate need for a single dry moment of rest?
This relentless movement created the army's spirit, but it also masked a systemic failure. The supply lines were never designed to keep up with the army's breathtaking pace. This meant that the moment the formal rations ran out, the common soldier was faced with a chilling necessity: forage. The line between discipline and plunder was thin, and often it was a starving soldier who had to cross it, forcing him to confront local populations already struggling under the weight of war. This necessity created an endless, self-feeding cycle of hardship, resentment, and violence that permeated every inch of the campaign. The training, the marching, the hunger, it all culminated in a single, terrifying moment: the first time you heard the roar of the guns. The baptism by fire was about to begin. The battlefield of the Napoleonic Wars was a space where human endurance met industrial-era killing power. It was a place of total sensory overload. If the march was brutal, The combat was a descent into a specific kind of hell that modern warfare has never quite replicated. You see the enemy line in the distance, a long, thin ribbon of color, perhaps red or white, depending on the foe. You advance in massive, dense formations. This is the line infantry, the backbone of every army, and you are trapped within it. The man next to you is your only shield and your greatest liability. The first reality of combat was the weaponry. Your life and the empire's fate rested on the flintlock musket, a weapon so infamously unreliable that you had to measure your survival in seconds, not meters. To load it, you had to perform 12 distinct movements: bite the paper cartridge, pour powder into the pan, close the pan, pour the rest down the barrel, ram the ball home, and cock the hammer. In the best conditions, an experienced soldier could fire 3 times a minute, but in the acrid smoke and the rain, that rate dropped precipitously. The sheer volume of black powder smoke quickly shrouded the entire field in an impenetrable, choking haze. This was the true fog of war, not merely confusion, but a literal blindness. Commands became impossible to hear, communication dissolved, and soldiers fought often with only the vaguest sight of their immediate neighbor, firing into the white cloud where they hoped the enemy still stood. Then there was the artillery. If the musket fire was a relentless, low-level drone of death, the cannons were the earth-shattering, soul-crushing blows that defined the battle. An iron cannonball, traveling at unimaginable speed, did not simply kill one man. It tore through a rank, sending bloody splinters of bone and musket wood flying, obliterating entire sections of the line. What does it do to the human spirit when a man watches 3 comrades instantly vaporized by a single bouncing projectile? The greatest fear of the infantryman wasn't the musket or the cannon, it was the cavalry. When the enemy's mounted soldiers, the cuirassiers, the hussars, the lancers, came thundering across the plain, the disciplined infantry had only one chance: forming the infantry square. Imagine the transition. From a long, exposed line, you must pivot and reform into a solid, hollow box, bristling with bayonets pointing outward, 4 ranks deep. The urgency is primal. You know the moment the horsemen hit, if there is a single weak point, a single gap, the square will shatter and the slaughter will begin. The deafening roar of hooves approaches, a sound that vibrates in your chest cavity.
Inside the square, the chaos is internalized. Horses scream as they are impaled on bayonets. Officers shout futile orders. You keep reloading, firing point blank at the mass of men and beasts trying to smash through your human wall. The men in the front rank knew they were the most exposed, yet they held their ground. The success of the square was a triumph of discipline over instinct, a testament to the unbreakable bond of the brothers in arms who knew they were only safe as long as they all stood together. The entire experience was a lottery of chance. Most wounds were not instantly fatal. They were horrific. Shrapnel, musket balls that shattered bone instead of passing cleanly, and the deep puncture of the bayonet. For the man who fell, a different terror began. The agonizing weight on the blood-soaked ground for the rudimentary, often brutal care of the surgeons. The battlefield was a machine that chewed men up, and the field hospital was where the scraps were collected. The greatest killer in the Napoleonic Wars was not the enemy's bullet, but the grinding, relentless campaign itself. The moments of intense battle were terrifying spikes of violence, But the majority of a soldier's life was defined by a slow, constant attrition of the body and mind. This was the true shadow cast by Napoleon's mighty eagle standard: endurance. Consider the testimony of those who lived it. They were not generals mapping out grand strategy. They were the men who paid the blood price for those maps. Jakob Walter, a German stonemason from Württemberg, conscripted into the Grande Armée, left behind a searing account. His words cut through the official glory and reveal the brutal reality of the 1812 campaign, the invasion and catastrophic retreat from Russia. In the snows, the Grande Armée, which had marched east with such pomp, became a shuffling, desperate horde. Walter described the roads in horrific terms. From Smolensk to Moshayesk, the war displayed its horrible work of destruction. All the roads, fields, and woods lay as though sown with people, horses, wagons, burned villages and cities. Everything looked like the complete ruin of all that lived. This was not just a military disaster. It was a human catastrophe, witnessed hour by hour by the men who endured it. The enemy they truly fought was the vast, unforgiving Russian winter, and the desperation that led men to commit unspeakable acts just to survive another night. Even in more temperate campaigns, life was a constant struggle against insufficiency. The legendary speed of the Grande Armée, which brought Napoleon so many triumphs, meant that supply lines were perpetually stretched thin, if they existed at all. Rations were meager: a daily allowance of coarse bread, perhaps salted meat, and a measure of wine or brandy to stave off the chill and the crushing fatigue. But when the wagons broke down or were captured, the soldiers were left to the mercies of the land. Foraging became the norm, turning armies into locusts descending on local farms, destroying any hope of positive relations with the populace, and often sparking vicious guerrilla resistance, particularly in Spain.
Off the battlefield, the most lethal threat was invisible. Hygiene was virtually non-existent. Troops marched for weeks without the opportunity to bathe. Lice infestations were a shared misery. Men slept shoulder to shoulder in overcrowded, unsanitary bivouacs or dilapidated barns, often sleeping on damp straw. The inevitable result was the swift and devastating spread of disease. Typhus, dysentery, and cholera claimed far more lives than enemy fire. The soldier who survived a cannonball might succumb days later to a fever brought on by a contaminated water source. And what of the wounded? The aftermath of battle was a horrifying spectacle. Field hospitals were makeshift, overwhelmed, and tragically ineffective. The chief surgeon, Dominique Chanlay, was a brilliant innovator, the father of ambulance, who pushed for rapid evacuation. But even his genius was limited by the technology of the era. Amputations, the most common serious surgery, were performed without anesthesia, with only a shot of liquor to dull the agonizing pain. The wound itself might not kill you, but the infection that almost inevitably followed, gangrene, was a virtual death sentence. To be a Napoleonic soldier was to understand that survival was less about skill and more about a brutal, constant negotiation with chance, hunger, exhaustion, and disease. It was a life lived on the ragged edge of existence. Amidst the endless cycle of marching, hunger, and slaughter, there was a different kind of survival, the survival of the spirit, fueled by ambition, honor, and loyalty. For every man who succumbed to disease or despair, there was another who pushed through, finding a path out of the common ranks and into the light of the Imperial Guard, the elite, the pampered, the untouchable core of Napoleon's power. This journey from conscript to hero is perhaps best personified by Jean-Roch Cornier. Born into poverty in 1776, Cornier was a common man whose life became a testament to the fact that Napoleon's meritocracy, however brutal,
truly existed. Conscripted in 1799, Cogniet didn't just survive, he excelled. He fought at Marengo, Austerlitz, and the fields of Waterloo. His memoirs are invaluable, offering a visceral, unfiltered glimpse into the brutality and the intoxicating allure of service under the emperor. Cogniet's rise was secured not by lineage, but by an extraordinary act of individual courage. At the Battle of Montebello, Cogniet, against all odds, single-handedly captured an Austrian cannon. It was an act of such audacious bravery that it earned him an award reserved for only the most exceptional valor. He later wrote, "I received a musket of honor for single-handedly capturing an Austrian cannon at the Battle of Montebello," a statement delivered with the characteristic understatement of a man who saw miracles as simply another day's work. His promotion to the Imperial Guard meant better pay, better food, and the immeasurable pride of serving alongside the Emperor's most trusted soldiers, the Old Guard, who were famously said to die but never surrender. But the Napoleonic conflicts were not just a French story. To fully understand the life of a soldier during this era, we must turn to the perspective of the enemy, a soldier who fought with equal tenacity and endured equal hardship. Enter Benjamin Randall Harris, a rifleman in the 95th Regiment of Foot. Harris's memoirs, The Recollections of Rifleman Harris, provide a crucial counterpoint to the French accounts. He was one of the Green Jackets, a new breed of soldier equipped with the Baker rifle, a weapon far more accurate and slower to load than the smooth-bore musket, and trained in skirmishing and unconventional warfare. His life was defined by the relentless brutality of the Peninsular War, 1807 to 1814, in Spain.
Harris's most harrowing memory was the retreat to Corunna, 1808-1809. In the face of Marshal Soult's advancing French forces, Harris and the British Army were forced into a desperate, grueling withdrawal across the mountains in the depths of winter. His words paint a picture of utter devastation and breakdown. "We were now in a most deplorable condition, worn down with fatigue and privation of every kind. Soldiers collapsed from starvation, cold, and sheer exhaustion. They abandoned equipment, and the bonds of discipline frayed under the weight of utter despair." Harris's account starkly contrasts the grand strategies of commanders, forcing us to remember that war is fundamentally suffered at the level of the individual, struggling for his next mouthful of food and his next step. Through the eyes of men like Cogniet, the fiercely loyal French guardsman, and Harris, the pragmatic, enduring British rifleman, we see that the soldier's life was not just about the nation he served, but about the human qualities he possessed: grit, resilience, and the capacity for extraordinary feats of courage. It was an environment that stripped a man down to his essence, revealing either his weakness or his unstoppable will. The harshness of the Napoleonic soldier's life forged a bond more powerful than the fear of death, more enduring than the promise of glory: brotherhood. In an era defined by chaos and relentless suffering, the profound sense of camaraderie among men became the crucial element of survival. It wasn't merely friendship, it was a desperate, mutual reliance where your life literally depended on the man next to you holding his nerve. This was the core identity of the army. Within the ranks, differences of class, region, and language melted away under the brutal heat of shared experience. The veteran mentored the frightened conscript not out of charity, but because a disciplined, capable private was essential to the collective security of the company. Sharing a meager ration of bread, nursing a comrade's infected wound, or simply standing firm in the square when every instinct screamed for flight. These everyday acts defined the esprit de corps that made the Grande Armée unstoppable for so long. This brotherhood extended even beyond the soldiers to those who served them. No figure better exemplifies this mutual respect than Dominique Jean Larrey, the chief surgeon of the Grande Armée. Larrey was an innovator who pioneered the use of flying ambulances to treat the wounded rapidly on the field. He treated all soldiers, French, Russian, or British, with equal diligence, earning him the moniker, the soldier's friend. His reward was not money or title, but the fierce loyalty of the men he saved. His life was almost lost during the catastrophic retreat from Russia in 1812. At the deadly Berezina River crossing, amidst the collapsing bridge and a terrifying barrage, soldiers recognized the surgeon who had tirelessly risked his life for them. In a spontaneous, profound act of collective gratitude, the desperate men lifted Leray over their heads and physically passed him across the treacherous path to safety. This was the ultimate expression of the soldier's code. A life saved was a debt repaid, even in the very jaws of annihilation. This human story of loyalty and sacrifice is the final, enduring truth of the Napoleonic Wars. When the cannons finally fell silent after Waterloo, the surviving soldiers returned to a Europe forever changed, carrying scars both visible and invisible. Many struggle to reintegrate. How do you return to the slow, predictable rhythm of farming after witnessing the speed of history? How do you forget the sight of your closest friends turning into statistics?
Yet their legacy is undeniable. These men, whether they fought under the tricolor or the Union Jack, fundamentally redefined warfare. They demonstrated the terrifying power of mass mobilization and the effectiveness of a citizen-based, meritocratic army driven by fierce national will. Their collective stories, from the hunger and cold of Jacob Walter to the defiant courage of Jean-Roch Cugnet, provide a profound, often overlooked insight into the true cost of imperial ambition. We look back at the grand strategies, the genius of Napoleon, and the pivotal battles. But when we strip away the gilded glory, what remains is the simple, powerful image of the infantryman. A young man, shoulder to shoulder with his brother-in-arms, marching on swollen feet toward a smoke-filled horizon. He was overworked, underfed, constantly threatened by disease, and yet capable of courage that still stuns us 2 centuries later. The life of a Napoleonic soldier was a complex tapestry woven with threads of valor, hardship, camaraderie, and sacrifice. These men endured grueling marches, faced the horrors of battle, and navigated the challenges of daily military life with resilience. Their experiences on and off the battlefield not only shaped the outcomes of the Napoleonic Wars, but also left an indelible mark on military history. Understanding their stories provides a profound insight into the human aspects of warfare during this tumultuous period, honoring the legacy of those who marched, fought, and lived under Napoleon's eagle standard. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep-dive historical documentaries just like this one. Don't let these powerful stories fade into the smoke of the past.